Welcome. This is interesting because I've never had it behind me, so I have to go like this occasionally to know what you're looking at. Maybe I'll stand here for you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Susan Schrott, and I'm here to talk to you about my personal journey as an artist, and specifically more and more, oh great, thanks. How does it work? There we go. Okay. Oh, I'm learning. More and more about the importance of art as a healing tool. And I'm also a psychotherapist. I've been a therapist for over 30 years, and I specialize in the treatment of eating disorders. And I also have had a textile in my hands, let's see. Oh, look at that, that's me. Since I was a very young child. I've never not had fiber of some form in my hand. Initially as a kid it was, yarn. I had two grandmothers from different parts of Europe, immigrants, and they knitting needles were stuck in my hand. My mother can't thread a needle and can't sew a button, so it skipped a generation. And she's proud to say that. But I can't go anywhere without some sort of fiber. Even waiting in the airport, you all heard the story that see, look, I'm talking like Leanne. I spent a day with her, I'm saying y'all. I'm from Brooklyn, we don't say y'all. Even in the airport yesterday, my needles were going. For me, it's very soothing. So here you can see very specifically the fourth sentence is the most important to me. My objective is to move people and instill a sense of hopefulness that is divinely within themselves until we all realize that we all possess the energy to inspire others. And I feel that way as an artist, and I feel that way as a clinician. That my purpose is clearly to inspire hope and healing. And I do it through both of my practices as an artist. So first of all, isn't that cool? I did this myself. Leanne, did I leave a letter out of your name?
No.
Okay. Oh, right, deal back. Leanne somehow found me through another organization called Stars of Hope. But we never met in person until I landed in the airport here. And, she just must have kept me on her radar because she talked about me coming to Arkansas. And oh, sure, I'll come to Arkansas. And I don't like to fly. And then, COVID happened, I didn't hear from her, and I forgot about this. And then, about a few months ago, hey, it's Leanne, do you want to come to Arkansas? Okay, and here I am. This is amazing. And along with that, Brenda helped get, I think it was a grant for me to be here, and then Brenda and Leanne coordinated with Jennifer Schrott at Northwest, where I'll be tomorrow. And so this is amazing for an artist from New York to be here and to be so welcomed and embraced, and it's very comforting. As an artist, sometimes, it's not often you get invited or recognized. It's hard work. Being a clinician, I have a solid private practice and I work, and that's been established for many, many decades. But it's very, very, very special to be here, and I'm very grateful. This is me as a little girl, and you can see I kind of look the same, right? I've always believed in expressing myself through movement and fiber and art. And I was originally trained as a ballerina, modern dancer, and as a musical theater actress, and I had a career in that industry for quite a while. And I just have to say, I don't know how many of you know who Jacques D'Amboise is. He was a principal dancer, and I met him a couple of summers ago, and I ran home knowing he was going to be at this talk, and I had him sign this for me. He has since passed away. This is me, and when I was studying at Ballet Russe, and they called and they needed some models for a New York Times article, and they needed some ballerinas. And I share this story. It's a very powerful one for me, and I'm saying it publicly for the first time. I was at 11, and when this came out, it was on Sunday, August 27th in the New York Times. And as a child, you would not believe I'm the same person standing here in front of you talking about this. I was very kind of shy and insecure kid. And when that picture came out in the New York Times, there were 3 of us that day that were asked to model, 3 little girls. And this picture came out, and when I opened it up and I saw it, I brought it to my mother. And I said, Mommy, They did not use me. I couldn't believe that that child was me. And so there begins the journey of the healing power of art, both personally and professionally. Like so many of the people I work with, I had my own work to do on building my own confidence, self-esteem, and self-worth, and seeing that this beautiful child was myself. So I've said that for you all to hear for the first time. Oh, okay. Am I going the wrong way? Okay, so to begin with, apologize. Okay, there we go. Jump fast forward to today, and why I'm here. That little girl that you see in that picture is who I am today, and I can sit here and say I live a very joyful, rich, bountiful life based on the combination of doing my work as a therapist and as an artist, and I've raised two magnificent daughters, and I have a granddaughter. And so now, it's been 30 years of private practice and over 30 years of creating textile art. And this is how my process begins, and I thought I would just jump right in and show you. But before I do that, let me just tell you, I went from being a ballerina to a musical theater actress, to dropping out of college, to going back to college at 28 at the height of my career in theater, leaving the theater, getting my master's in social work, and becoming a clinical social worker. I'm not going to fall off the stage. And getting married, having two children, and building my private practice and an art career at the same time. That's how I landed here. When I make my artwork, except for a few of my earlier pieces, which are out there, and I can tell you which ones because they're in the show, I start with a bolt of white fabric. That's it, 100% cotton. And then I hand dye my own fabric because I truly believe that everything that is on that fabric has to be made from my hands. And so I have a basement, and I'm in the basement here, and this is what I look like when I'm dyeing my fabric. I use Procyon dyes, and I do need to use a mask because it can be toxic if you use them a lot. This is what they look like when they're done. These are my fabrics. Are you pointing to me?
Yeah, it went to the next one.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry, folks.
You're all right.
Yeah, well, I've never used a pointer before. Okay.
There you go.
So these are all my hand-dyed fabrics. Now imagine this is all white to start. I'm very disciplined and very organized in everything. Remember I said you all had to sit balanced when you all sat down? Just some of you were here earlier, I made you move around because I like things neat and tidy. Some people call that OCD, but I call it organized and disciplined, and I have a vision of what makes me feel balanced. So these are all my fabrics. I call this my palette, all right? Some people have paint, I have fabric that I've created. These are other ways that I make my fabric. Sometimes they'll be outside, and I will use, because the pieces are so large, and I live on a piece of property where I can do this. So again, but those are the dyes, but just in a bottle. This is a picture of me. These are stamps that I actually make my own stamps. And if you think about the piece out there, the 9 Faces of Women, which is the one that's under the name of the gallery here, after my talk, if you go and look at it, and you see swirls that are in the fabric, that's how I did them. And again, just different ways that I work. So Surrender to Joy was one of my first real important pieces. And it has to do, again, with the art of using art as a healing process. I had viral meningitis twice, and I had it the first time, I think it was 2002. And I was seeing patients and then also trying to do art, and I was exhausted and in a lot of discomfort and pain. I remember having a conversation with my husband and saying, I need to take a sabbatical, I just want to do art. And we talked about it, we figured it out, and I said, I'm going to surrender to joy as I heal. So this is sort of my alter ego, she's me. And this is a piece that really is how I discovered my passion about creating images of women that are joyful. And that is Surrender to Joy. I believe she's here, and she has Swarovski crystals in her crown. A lot of people look at these little mini pieces of creations on the side. A lot of women say, oh, she has pocketbooks. And I don't see it that way, but they're just, each one is a bird that you can flip them. And so that was my first piece of kind of defining my voice. This is commercial fabric. This is not made with my hand-dyed fabrics. This was before I started my hand-dyed fabrics. This is a detail of the work. This kind of, this work in here, I call it thread painting. I've stopped defining myself as a quilter. I'm an artist. And so and you'll see in other pieces, so this is really what I call thread painting. I use the needle as a paintbrush, and the thread, again, is just another form of a paint or palette. This is bird in her hand. This was really all hand-dyed, and it's based on a picture of my daughter when she was getting married. I drew a sketch of a picture of her, and that inspired bird in her hand. These are some details of the work. I'll get out of the way here for a second. You can see this piece, this photo is actually the piece under the machine. Any questions so far? I love questions, don't be shy. Again, this is a really good example of thread painting. This is where I don't let the machine make the stitches. I have I have two machines. One of them is quite large, so I can lay a 5-foot piece under it. And so I move the fabric. So that's how I do this. I'm moving the fabric. It's like a dance. And there's a lot of breath work. Right? So all of this is thread painting, those swirls up there. I'm literally going like this with the fabric. There have been times I've had 6-foot pieces of fabric that are so heavy, I have it over my shoulder, because otherwise it's awkward to move it, and if it's too heavy, it won't move gracefully, and it'll affect my thread painting, right? It might jolt, and I'll have a big piece of thread that I didn't want there. So I have to sometimes rip. But again, this is based on my daughter's wedding dress. Sisters of My Soul is over there. Again, here's those stamps I made. You see them all in here? It's a little blurry, I'm sorry about that. Is that because it's not in focus, or is it in focus to you guys out there? Mm-hmm. So Sisters of My Soul, these are all in, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 faces of women in here. Again, they were originally done on white pieces of muslin that I then just drew the images of the women, went back in with stamps and paint and surface design and embellishment, then created the piece. I didn't put a lot of slides in, and I should have, of how it's actually made. It's piece by, this is me working on it. But the step before it even gets to this is like, I feel like I'm an architect sometimes, because it's like building the piece and stepping back and making sure, as I said earlier, I feel like everything's balanced and it makes sense and the story's coming through. But this is how I work. I'm on a step ladder here because it's a pretty high wall. If you look carefully here, you'll see a strip of, do you see this strip right here that's not attached? I don't know if you can see that. Mm-hmm. That's what it looks like when it's not part of the piece yet. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. So it's built as I go. Oh, good. Oh, hello. There we go. So yeah, this is a great example of what I'm saying. So I'll spend quite a lot of time just building it, making these pieces, which is a complicated process to begin with. And again, remember, everything's white fabric when I start. And then build and lay it out, and then eventually put it together. It takes months and months for one of these kind of pieces to be made, especially because this is quite large. But that's a perfect example on the top right of what it looks like before it becomes the large piece. So it's built and built as I go. Let me just pause and say, because a few people have asked me out there how I come up with this stuff. It's in here. I don't draw first. An example of what I'm talking about is I meditate, and about a few weeks ago I was meditating. My husband was used to seeing me meditating. And he came in the room and, oh, sorry, are you meditating? I said, no, just a second. He's waiting. I said, okay, I got it. I said, okay, I just finished the design of my next piece. I see it in my brain, and I'll show you which piece I'm talking about that he was referring to. That's how it happened. So I get an image in my head, and I actually then fill in like a coloring book. I see it, and then I get very excited. Then I also get a little scared because I know that what I do is it's hard. You know, and as someone who's very specific, I really have put a lot of pressure on myself for the quality of the work to be good too. And then there's the part of me that has the voice, is it good enough? Are they gonna like it? Am I good enough? Am I worthy? That little girl, the ballerina, right? So there's that balance of remembering, I'm here to be a voice of inspiration, spread love, kindness, compassion, and healing. And then when I go back to that, then the work will just flow. Not always effortlessly, it's not easy, but I love it. This is 5 tuskers and a temptress. My husband named that piece. It's just a fun piece. Another very important piece of information, which you'll see more of later on. I can't draw. True confessions here. You're hearing a lot of firsts. I can't draw. Is that surprising to hear? I can't. So I use myself as a model in almost everything I do. I take pictures of myself in an image of a position that I want to create. So I took a picture. My husband, I'm nagging him all the time. Can you get this picture? I have an image, I need it. That's me outside our house hanging off a tree. And I didn't put the original photograph in. And then I used that as my template. I'm not that talented. Like I have visions, I have ideas, and then I create them one way or the other, they're gonna get made. So I know I work well off a photograph of something that I wanna create, and since I can't do the initial drawing myself, I'll be the model, and then I'll make it from that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how these things all happen. Not the ones of the faces, those I draw just for myself. Those are totally out of my head. Yes?
Would you explain the process you used to create the background fabric of this piece?
Oh, sure, I'd love to. So it started out, the background is about, it's 44 inches high, right? So I have a piece of fabric that was white muslin, 44-inch white cotton, 44 by 38. Plain white fabric. I then hand dyed it. But because you can see it's all modeled and there's different colors, it was a process of many, many different dyeing stations where I would dip a little bit, then go in with a little bit of spray the bottles that had dye in them, and then put a little bit of that pink down here, this raspberry color here. So the whole back piece is a whole cloth that I fabric painted. And often, the beautiful thing about working in this manner is I can't control the outcome. It's got a life of its own when working with hand dyes. And that's really exciting. So I will make barrels and barrels of fabric, and I never know what I'm gonna get. And I can't sleep at night waiting to wake up in the morning to rinse it and see what I'm gonna get. It's so exciting. It's like unbelievably exciting, because I never know. You can mix the dyes, you can put them in a certain way. I'll layer fabric sometimes, and then you rinse, and then you say, whoa, wow, it's so surprising. There's rarely a fabric that that reveals itself that I don't love. But this was made by my first starting a whole cloth piece. Then the other pieces on the tree is a separate piece on top of it. And the dress are separate pieces. And everything else is separate fabrics that I then will make and adhere to the piece. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, thanks for the question. I love questions. There you go. I also love elements. Again, you can see a lot of thread painting here. I don't plan ahead what my thread painting is going to look like. I don't know what I do plan. I take that back. Well, I'll wait to talk about that. I don't plan like this stitching. I decide it's going to be more of a free pattern, but I don't plan every little, paintbrush stroke, so to speak. I just let it happen as I go. So I never know what's going to come out. And those are Swarovski crystals on the elephant's head and saddle. Fiddler on the Couch was a picture, was based on a photograph of my daughter when she was a teenager. She was a violinist. Now she's a scientist. But she was lying on the couch, that's like fiddling like this. I said, I'm gonna make a piece like that. So this is a Fiddler on the Couch. The background of this, I don't think I have, oh, I do, look at that. Really was hard, creating the borders, the panels, and putting it all together like this. But this is what I call Fiddler on the Couch, and I often use, and you'll see it as we go on more and more, the threads I like to use are variegated. I don't like plain thread, like solid colored. I prefer to have the excitement. Again, I love the unveiling of the patterns of things, and I have fun more. So when my studio has boxes and boxes of threads, most of them are variegated. I mean, I have a great collection of solids if I need them, but I love using variegated. It's just, I think it's just more fun. Open-minded woman is out here. So this was created by, the centerpiece is a drawing on fabric. That was just a freehand drawing. I shouldn't say I can't draw, it's just how I draw, right? So it just was a simple, loving piece that I wanted to envision a woman as almost like a tree with an open brain connected to some infinite light. And so there she is. This is Graffiti Girl. A group of women I work with helped me title her. And she just came to be after doing all the other pieces that were stamped. I was having so much fun with it. I made this piece, and I thought it was too dark, and actually they encouraged me to keep going with it. And they said it looked like graffiti, so that's how she got her name. And again, that's a drawing by hand, right? Freehand drawing. This is a piece that includes what I call surface design, paint, thread painting, the original stamps, and then the faces, I do a lot of the facial work. I use textile markers, so I know that they're not going to bleed into the fabric. This piece you've all seen, 9 faces of women. They're outside. Again, these women were drawn again on white fabric initially, and this actually has been in a lot of shows already, and it was the centerpiece of an exhibition I was in Washington, and they had a beautiful catalog. I was blown away when I got it, because this was the centerpiece. It was a 2-page spread of my ladies. So, and each woman, I like to think of it as, they're sisters. It's a sisterhood all together, right? They support each other, yet they're separate, so they can be individuals, but they know they're surrounded by each other. That's me and my ladies, and you can see the detail of the work. Each of these drawings has such, if you care to afterwards go out and see each face, there is enormous detail in each and every woman's dress and in their hair, and sometimes it's hard to put it all together because I love them as individual pieces, and there's sort of a little bit of a sacrifice when I have to put them all together, but I think at the end of the day it's worth it to get the powerful statement that I hope it gives. Autumn Gypsy Rose. I have a photograph of my grandma Rose, who came to this country when she was 16. She came alone. Her family stayed back in Warsaw, Poland, and she came on her sister's passport because her sister was a year older, but she was afraid to come. So my grandmother said, I look like my sister, I'll take her passport and I'll go. This is a picture of my grandmother in Poland during the Jewish holiday of Purim, when you wear a costume and you dress up. And she was wearing a paper costume. This is my grandmother. I think she was a little, like 14 here. And this is my reproduction of that. In the original picture, she's indoors. I put her outdoors because at the time that I made this, of my grandmother Rose, who I knew very well, I lived in the country, so I was seeing leaves. It was autumn. That's how I got the name of the piece, Autumn Gypsy Rose, because in this costume, she was a gypsy. However, she came, and the rest of her family couldn't get here, and they were all murdered by the Nazis. So this is my tribute to my grandmother, Rose, and her beloved family. Dancing with the Timbos is an earlier piece, and can you tell why? Commercial fabric, not hand-dyed, right? And this is the story of my version of Miriam and her sisters crossing the Red Sea. And they're dancing, and they're celebrating, and they're having tambourines, and there's sea glass, and anything that I could possibly imagine. The beautiful thing about being an artist is you can do whatever you want. You can put whoever you want in your fantasy life, right? So in my version of Miriam and her girlfriends coming through the Red Sea, parted, is that there's camels in the water. You know, you can have fun. I love having fun. And I think too, for me as an eating disorder specialist and a therapist, that work is so serious. And so life and death at times, that this is such an incredible balance for me to bring the joy into fantasy land and playfulness, although there's great joy in my work as a therapist too, a great joy. But again, I can do whatever I want and not let anybody inhibit me in that way. These are some details. So here again, really intense thread painting on the bottom there, right? Can you imagine if we had clothes like that? Wouldn't that be awesome? Gosh. All right, first star I see tonight. I put this in here because this is the only piece of art, of my own art, that I have in my private practice. I'm now only on Zoom, but when I was in the office for over 30 years, this was the one piece of art I kept behind me. If I was sitting here, that was behind me, because most of the people I work with are adolescent females, girls, who are suffering from anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, anxiety, depression, things like that. And I would keep that behind me, because I knew they were seeing it. And I can't begin to tell you how many times my patients would say, I want to be like her. She looks so free. I want to be able to throw my head back and lift my heart and be open. And that is the only reason I kept that in my office, because I didn't want anything else to be in there except this little piece of inspiration. And it really helped a lot of people. So I share that with you today for that reason. I'm going to move into a different part of my work as an artist, which is I do a lot of social action pieces and also charitable works. In my faith, we call it mitzvah, which means to do a good deed. I'm Jewish. And so when my daughter turned 16, it was at the time Hurricane Katrina had just happened. And for her 16th birthday, I took her with a group of other young high school students to New Orleans. And we went there on a mission, so to speak. It was a Jewish organization to do some community service, and we went to visit all the children in the FEMA trailers. We brought a lot of supplies and did a lot of cleanup, and actually got really into the mess of the place and tried to bring some hope, make some connections. And I met a woman there, and when I was leaving, she said, please tell our story. So I came home and I created Shalom, y'all. And Shalom means peace, hello in Hebrew, and they're from the south side, y'all. And I made this piece, and it really does show what took place there. And these are the words that a lot of people said to me when we were there. These are the leaves. And this is what a lot of them said to me. Don't forget about us. Save a life, you save the world. And these are my words that I put into the piece. And because this was a Jewish organization that went, I've been pointed putting in some very traditional Jewish phrases like Tikkun Olam, mitzvot, and it says what they mean: kindness, humanity, chesed, repairing the world together. And I will tell you, my other daughter went with me, my older daughter. This trip changed her life. She is now an executive for a nonprofit organization and does a lot of big feasibility studies for a company and an organization in New York. And then she said this is where it started. So you young ones, what you do now makes a difference as you get older. This is when one of them said, tell our story, so I knew putting that in. This is the woman who told me that. That's the group we went with. And snippets of what's on the piece. I donated this piece to the UJA, the United Jewish Appeal, it has a home, a permanent home in Westchester. After that, I was invited down to Avalon Hills in Utah to do a piece, a therapeutic weekend with the clients there, all eating disorders, residential, and I sent instructions ahead of time for these old women, young girls, who were going to make trees of life. And then I said I would put it all together for them. So we worked all weekend creating trees of life, and I love this one. I put it in here. Love is the size of your heart, not the size of your genes. This is what one of the teenagers wrote. And it is good to have an end to journey towards, but it is the journey that matters in the end. And this is a perfect example of using art as a healing tool and a therapeutic tool. And these girls worked all weekend with me, and that's me when I went back home, assembling it. This is in my backyard. I laid them all out before I put them together. And that's what it looks like when it was done. And it was auctioned off as a fundraiser for the residential treatment center, and it was a very rewarding experience. That piece was, I was invited to have it submitted into this beautiful book called Quilts and Health, right? So I was happy about that, and then I also included the piece that I keep in my office. And this was published by 2 psychologists at the university. And I'm embarrassed to say I forgot to put their names in here, so I will do so. Again, in terms of community service and social action, I've often felt that when things are happening in the world that are really pretty scary and traumatizing, I think, what can I do? What can I do? And as many of us know, sometimes it's hard to know what we can do. You can always donate or something like that. But I typically will think of what I can make and give away that'll help or inspire or bring people together to help grieve. So when the Tree of Life shooting happened at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, this is exactly what I did. I called a friend, Kathleen Lynch, where I live on a very, very small island. I literally live on an island. It's a very small community, and I said, I need to get into the school with all the kids. It's a K through high school, and we need to make something for this community. So we did. The next day, Monday morning, she said, it's a go. I spent the week dyeing fabrics, and then I went into the school, and these are, as you all remember, these are the names of the people who were murdered at the synagogue. And then I got to work with the kids. I'll give you a second to read this because I haven't stopped talking, and I think it's appropriate to give you a moment to read this. Okay, so we got to work, and what better to do than to work with children, right? So I went into the school, and these little kids were amazing. During the week, I had cut little squares of fabric. You can see them here for the kids to write their messages of hope. And I had, as I said, I saw ahead of time what I was going to make. I knew it was going to be a tree of life. I knew that the leaves were going to have the kids' words on them. I knew there had to be birds for each victim, and I knew that in the center of it, because it was a synagogue, there was going to be a Jewish star. I saw it in my mind, and I knew that's what I was going in there trying to create with these children. So they got right to it, and they were all ages. They were incredible. And I have a video, which I did not have to upload into the PowerPoint, of this one little girl and a line of all the children. I'd say, show me your picture. And they were like, they just said in their little sweet little voices why they were making what they made. And this is them at work. And it was just an incredible day. Here's examples of what they did. Again, this is before I made leaves out of them. This is what they made for me to then fulfill my vision of this tree in Pittsburgh. Oh, they were just so precious. Here they are. And we, depending on the age of the student, we described why they were doing this in an age-appropriate way that would be appropriate for them to understand why we were doing this and what had happened. Then what I did was I went home to my studio, which is a mile from the school, and I put an ad out in a local newspaper inviting my neighbors and friends to come by. They also wanted to contribute. So these are my friends and neighbors that came by and added, there's the squares right there that I had dyed, and they all came and added their leaves with their prayers and hopes. And this is how I started it. I dyed, this was again white fabric. I knew how large I wanted it to be, and I wanted it to be very large. I also knew I was going to donate it to the synagogue. I don't have it, it's there. So I made a beautiful background, and this was the background upon which I was going to build the Tree of Life. And I work, again, on a very high design wall, and I'm often on a step ladder, and I've had 2 hip replacements, so it's scary. So this is how it started in February. I kept a journal the whole time, so this is snippets from the journal. And there were specifically a branch in this Tree of Life for each victim that was murdered, and there were 11 victims, and so this Tree of Life was to have 11 branches with 11 birds. This is an example of organizing all the kids and the adults' leaves that I then cut into the leaves to go onto the tree. And in the center is a Jewish prayer, and my husband does calligraphy, so he did that for me. I'll give you a moment to look. But you can see how large it is over there, right? The messages of hope and healing just are breathtaking from the children. And this is how big it is and how I work. This is a day in my life. Just to give you an idea though, typically I'll do this work in between patients. So I go from one head, I'll divvy up some time, and then switch to studio time, back to, because I usually see patients after school and then adults in the evening. So I'll work in the studio in the morning after my own personal morning practices, and then studio again in between, and then sometimes very, very late at night. So this is an example of how it goes. This is my larger machine right here. This is the machine that I lay the piece out on completely. And here I'm adding the crystals to the birds. It was very, very heavy for me, so I invited I kind of asked for some volunteers to help me. And you can see how it was held up for me so that I could, as I was describing earlier, if it's dragging, I'm not going to get the fluidity in the stitch I want. It would be like somebody having a paintbrush and somebody holding their arm. You can't do it, right? So these women held the piece for me so that I could move it gracefully and create the stitches that I wanted. And it was an experience I'll never forget, because I mean this, with connection, healing happens. And this was as much about us healing and our grief, for our empathy for what we had all witnessed, right? So it's not like I'm just doing it. There is some selfishness here too. You know, we need to heal. And again, personally, it is through art that I find the greatest personal healing. And then in the midst of the pain and the suffering, there's this joy. We're working together. It's beautiful. I mean, how joyful is it to have this group of women? Look, everyone's smiling, but this is for a tragic reason. But we're joyful together, and that's how the healing happens. That's my husband, who is a very quiet man and very supportive. And this is what I really mean. As you give love generously, receive the abundance of sweetness in return. The cycle of healing flourishes. That is from my upcoming book, Rise with Radiance. So I sent this down to the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and it's gone. It's theirs. There it is. This piece is here. Masked Blessings, COVID. I turned my artistic studio into a mask making studio. I ended up making over 1,100 masks and just gave them away because nobody could get masks. So I was seeing patients literally all day. And the most patients I'd ever seen in the 30 years I've been in practice. I was sitting at the computer on Zoom for about 30 clinical hours a week because the people were suffering. And at night, I would make masks. And because I had my daughter who was pregnant at the time living with me, she came in from New York City to be with me because of COVID, I couldn't let anybody in the house. So I have a little table outside my house with an elephant on it. And I would make, people would be asking for masks, I would get emails, because I put it out again into the community paper that if anybody needs a mask, I'll make a mask. And so, and I felt like Santa Claus, because I would make these little piles of masks and leave them on the table at night. People, I would see people through the window coming to get their masks, and I had their names on them. And again, it's how I coped with my pain and my sense of helplessness. And I made sure that each mask was a work of art, though. They had to be pretty. And they were very, very good quality cotton. At that time, that was before we knew about KN95s and 95 masks. It was something, right? So I ended up making them for, again, I live on an island, and to get on this island, you have to take a boat, a ferry. It takes cars, but it's kind of small. These guys on the boat were wearing pink polka dot masks because it's what I had. And they were happy to have them. So this is how I made them. And I did, these were landscaping guys that needed masks. That's my son-in-law who was working through the height of COVID, and he got very, very sick and he's an oral surgeon, he got COVID. And that's my dear friend, the woman at the top right is a Gold Star mother. And this was Memorial Day, and they needed masks, and they asked me to make masks in red, white, and blue, and I did. And these are just different people, and I would just send them out if I got a call. This piece is not here, and this is my most current piece. It's called The Seven Sisters, and wow, I wish it was here, but I do have fine art prints of them being made because it's really special. I was asked by this library in Montauk, Long Island, which is a beautiful, beautiful it's the end of the North Fork of Long Island and the South Fork, and it hits the ocean, and there's a beautiful community there. And they asked me to do a piece called, based on these houses that were built during the Gilded Age by a very well-known architect, and of course, Frederick Olmsted, who did all of the parks, Central Park and all that stuff. So they said, can you do the piece called The Seven Sisters about the houses in Montauk? I said, have you seen my work? I don't do houses, I do ladies, I do women who are like flying and dancing. And the woman the program director, she said, Susan, I know your work, I know you can do this. And she sent me something about the Pleiades constellation, which is about the seven sisters. And then I saw that, I said, okay, I can do that. I can do 7 women. I proceeded to then do intense research about the 7 sisters of the Pleiades constellation. They all have different names and personalities and body sizes and all kinds of interesting stuff. So I made the 7 sisters. And again, I don't know if I have a picture here. Here it is in process. Let me go back a minute. But what I didn't show you here is I posed for every one of those women. So this picture of that lady on the top, like this, was me on the floor going like this. And I would photograph myself with my camera. My family just comes up, don't come in, I'm taking pictures. Every one of these women, I was my own model for. So because I knew what I wanted them to look like. So I became them. And then I created them here. What is your name of the black sweater?
Glenda.
Yes.
Jane?
Jane and I were talking earlier, and she was talking about the importance of having people do art. And this is how I was waiting to tell you about this. For me, it's heart through hand. is how I create my art. It's not from my head. I try to get out of my head, because that's where it's messy. And it's not always so nice, right? But when I'm working from my heart through my hand, Jane, then we get to express authentically without anything getting in the way. It's pure. So I always encourage people to play. Play, play, play. Play like you were 6 years old. Get dirty, get messy. This is part of my process. And those are the templates that I make of those pictures of myself. And they change. I altered them. It didn't end up being that. That orange strip becomes that dress. And then I'm like, I gotta get those houses in there. They want those houses. I called the Montauk Historical Society and I said, do you have pictures of the houses from the Gilded Age that were in Montauk by the architect, Homestead? She said, oh yeah. She sent them to me, and that was it. I said, I'm gonna just transfer images of those to my art. And I said, no, I'm gonna make the houses, and I did. I ended up making the 7 houses, and I can't believe it, there's no picture in here of them. Oh yeah, well there's one up there. And you can see them, there they are. They were made with the teeniest pieces of fabric I've ever worked with. Maybe even some of them were less than 1/8 of an inch, and I just sat there and I made them, and they are all accurate reproductions of the houses in Montauk. So I ended up, I can now say I do houses. So the last thing I'll talk about, I think we're heading to the end, is in 2017, my dad, who has passed away, was very sick. He'd been sick for a long time with kidney failure, and he's the sweetest guy, a very talented photographer, very well-known photographer. My mother's also a painter. I come from a very artistic background. But at the time that he was failing, I was living in the city, New York City at the time, and we would only go to our house on the weekend, this little house we have on this island. And that's where my studio was. So I couldn't create art, and I was really suffering because of that. So, because my dad was in the city, and it was before COVID, we were going back and forth and back and forth. So I took 5x7 pieces of white little cotton squares to the city with me. And every day, after I would do my meditation, some yoga or movement and prayer, I would come up with an affirmation to kind of set my head straight. Because it was very stressful I'm a daughter, and I have 2 brothers, well, I'm in the middle. And no one was around. My younger brother would fly in and from California, but I was basically the one taking care of my father and my mom. And so to write myself every morning, I did a morning practice of meditation, movement, prayer, writing down what little thought came out, and then a picture of how I felt. And I did it for 365 days. I did not miss a day. And I have a book. It's called Rise with Radiance. It will be out in November. And it is, here I am, being my own model. Again, you can see it. And that's what they become. So I just use myself because I want the visual that I know I want to express. But then I recreate a textile. Here we go. Some mornings I look like that. And you can see how it's nothing like me once they're in textile, but I know the movement I want to exude. So this is just to give you some examples. That's my garden. I have gardens that I spend a lot of time in also. This is a sample page from the book, and this is an example of my of an inspirational quote that I would come up with as my prayer and meditation, which is, create your own sacred space, inviting in love, compassion, empathy, and loved ones who embrace you and swallow you with all the love you deserve. Breathe deeply, exhale deeply, expand your heart towards the sky. You sparkle exquisitely. Within the cloudy mind, there is always room for sunshine. Even if the windows are drawn and the curtains are closed, visualize a light upon you like honey, slowly sweetening your mind, bringing you peace and serenity. And finally, celebrate you today. Express being you, share being you, create being you, share being you, expect the unexpected, being you, laugh being you, cry being you, play being you, go to bed being you, rise with you, rise with radiance. Thank you. Hope that inspires you. I welcome any questions. I hope you have. Does anyone have questions for me? Oh my God. Thank you.
So many of these pieces seem incredibly personal and tied to yourself and your family. In what way does your family tend to inspire you to make these pieces?
That's a beautiful question. And it's nice to hear that from someone so objective who doesn't know me. I think that even though it might feel like I'm inspired by my family, and I am, I see myself as part of a larger family, all of us. So my family, I guess I'm inspired because I'm a product of it, although I really work very hard to be my own person. But I'd like to believe that even though your experience of watching this is that I am and have been inspired and very much supported by my family, I think it's that this universe is one. So this is for me, it's more of a universal family. Does that make sense? But that's a really interesting point, something for me to consider. But I see it as, this is something anybody can identify with. I hope, that's my hope, that, I might be some Jewish lady from Brooklyn, and you're out here in Arkansas, but we're one, right? So I'm hoping that the message is that it's about all of us. Does it feel like that? I'd like to know. Or did it not? Yeah. Any other questions?
Time. How long does it take you to do a piece then?
It's interesting you ask that too, because for the last piece, The Seven Sisters, I did something I've never done in 31 years. I kept a time card. Because it was a commissioned piece. I'm like, how long is this going to take me? I'm curious. I think it was that piece, but I worked feverishly because I had a deadline, and I do well when I have a deadline. It must have been about 200 hours for that Seven Sisters piece, but it was not a relaxed 200 hours. It was too many hours, but it was because I was running out of time. Some pieces can take me 4 to 6 months. The smaller pieces, which I don't do that many small pieces anymore. I like working very large. I think it's much more powerful and impactful. But it takes months from start to finish. Yeah. Yes.
Well, how long was the conceptual period before you actually physically started working on the Seven Sisters? How long did that take?
Well, I didn't get that much notice. So I was asked to do this piece in the winter. And then I went through the panic of I don't do houses. And then she sent me this little blurb about the Pleiades constellation. So that was December, January. And this is already up for exhibit by May. It was up and exhibited by May. It's on exhibition permanently now. So I started with the dyeing of the fabric in the end of the winter. So we're talking maybe December, January, February, March, April, 4 months. But really intense work. I was stressed, I'm not gonna lie. Because I felt if I had more time, it would have been a little bit more what I would have preferred to say joyful. I was very excited by it. Oh, there's a video I didn't show you, but when I work, just as a little side note, I love musical theater. So I'm like dancing to like Julie Andrews, and I have really fun videos. I'll put it in next time. So I'm always listening to music when I am in the studio, usually musical theater, or sometimes meditation music. So it took a while. Yes?
When you dye your fabric, do you dye bundles of fabric so
Yes.
that you'll have your own selection
Yes.
to choose from?
Yes, I'll do anywhere between 30 or 50 yards.
You probably have to do it when the weather is.
No, I do it indoors, in the
oh,
basement. I do it in the basement. It's not a pretty sight. It's funny, actually. Yeah. Any other questions?
So you're a therapist, this is your therapy.
This is 100% my therapy, plus other things. But yeah, I see this as the most, I'm lucky I get to do this. So my message to you all is, it doesn't matter if you, let me say this differently. Everybody is an artist. People who say, I can't do this, or I can't do this, I can't do this, say, yeah, but can you bake? Can you garden? Can you weave? Can you do a coloring book? Can you read? Can you do yoga? Can you walk? Can you watch the sunrise? That's art. Everybody is an artist. Everybody. It's our birthright. So I really feel sad, and I get a little protective of people when people say, oh, I can't do that, I'm not an artist. But that's not true. We are born artists. We are expressions of perfection and art. So every one of you, I just want to say, the last thing I'll say, unless you have more questions, is find something that brings you joy and do it. Keep it simple. And if your head says, oh, I'm not good at it, because I do that, I say, go away, go away, go away. You don't get to decide that, somebody else does. And that something else is something much greater than me. And that something much greater than me wants me to believe that I'm worthy enough to be here talking to you in Arkansas, and that I'm supposed to be here, and you're supposed to do whatever brings you joy, without shame, without guilt, without apologizing for it. And it's taken me, I'm 65 years old. It's taken me a long time to get from that little ballerina who didn't see herself to be here to talk about this, and not care what my kids think, what anybody thinks. It's a miracle. It is a miracle that I am telling you this. It is a miracle that I'm saying this publicly. It's unbelievable. And that's all because of this. This lady, I would never show this picture a year ago. I'd be like, who does she think she is? Yeah, because I want you to feel the same way in your version of whatever that looks like. So with that, I say thank you. I'm glad you came. I feel very blessed.